Hey, welcome to another episode of Ask Samir. Today's question comes in from Mary, and Mary wants to know, hey Samir, I filed for my green card through marriage, and when I received my green card, it was only valid for 2 years. How come it's only valid for 2 years, and how do I get my permanent green card, which is going to be valid for 10 years? Is this normal? Cool. Thanks for your question, Mary. Very short question with a somewhat long answer. I will answer your question right after this. Hi, I'm Samir Kumar, and I'm an immigration lawyer. During these videos, I answer the questions you ask, and I answer the questions you should ask. Now, before we get started, here's something important you need to know. The information in these videos is not legal advice. Also, watching these videos does not make me your lawyer, and it does not make you my client. I recommend that you speak to a licensed immigration attorney about your case before doing anything. If you want to speak to me, no problem. I'll tell you how to do that in just a few minutes. All right, let's get started. All right, welcome back to Ask Samir. Today's question came in from Mary, and Mary basically wants to know why she received a 2-year green card after she got married to a U.S. citizen instead of a 10-year permanent green card. So this is a very short question, but a reasonably long answer. So Mary, I'm going to explain to you the process and what needs to be done and why this is actually normal. So what happens is the government is in the business of giving green cards, giving citizenship, giving visas, but also preventing fraud. So the basis for setting up this 2-year, what's called a conditional green card, is to prevent marriages that are done simply for immigration purposes. Now, as a brief aside, if you are doing or you're thinking about doing a filing for marriage just to get a green card just for immigration purposes, don't do it. Go find another way. You're going to get caught. You're going to get in trouble. It's not worth it, okay? But if you have a legitimate marriage, here's what happens. If you have been married for less than 2 years, and just to clarify, I'm talking about someone who is getting their green card by marrying a U.S. citizen, okay? So that's what Mary did. She married a U.S. citizen, and she was able to get her green card. Now, what happens is, if you have been married for less than 2 years, the government wants to cover their ass. They want to make sure that saying, hey, listen, you know what? If someone is getting married for immigration purposes and they fool us during the initial interview, we want to make sure that we weren't totally wrong. So they issue what's called a conditional green card, which is valid for 2 years. At the end of those 2 years, you have to go back and you have to apply to quote unquote remove that conditional residence and get your permanent green card. What does that mean? That means you're good for 2 years. You have the equivalent of what's a green card, but it's conditional. That means you do have to get your permanent green card. How do you do that? Well, after 2 years, actually technically, you can file after 1 year and 9 months to get your permanent green card or to remove your conditions on residence. These are technical terms. Don't worry too much about the technical terms. Any attorney can explain that to you. But what you need to know is that in 2 years, you're basically going to have to prove that you entered into a legitimate marriage. So they're going to say, well, okay, let's see all your evidence and prove to us that your marriage is legitimate. Now, this is a kind of a pain in the neck because if you're sitting there thinking, well, you know what, my marriage is legitimate, why do I need to prove it? That's kind of what you need to do. It's like saying, hey, listen, you know what, I understand there's gravity, but you got to prove to me that there's gravity. So you drop an apple and they say, I'm not convinced yet. So you drop a pencil, I'm still not convinced. So you drop a couple other things and then they say, okay, I'm convinced. That's how this works. So you're going to start collecting documents between now, the time that you got your conditional green card, and the time that you're going to be filing for your permanent green card. You're going to collect things like joint bank statements, joint car insurance statements, joint health insurance. You're going to show that you have mail coming to the same address. You're going to show pictures together, videos together. If you have a child together, that's awesome proof. That's pretty much the best proof that you can have that it's a legitimate marriage. And you're going to put all this stuff together, and you're going to need to submit all of this when you file to remove your the conditions on residence and file for your permanent green card. Now, the application itself to remove your conditional status is actually reasonably simple. It's the evidence that's pretty important. Like if you are wrong with the evidence, then they can come back and they can request additional evidence, they can question the legitimacy of your marriage and all that stuff, and you don't want to run into that situation. So even though your marriage is legitimate, you still got to prove it. That's what's happening right now. And again, the government is just basically covering themselves. They're saying, if we were wrong, we just need to make sure that this is a legitimate marriage. Now, a lot of people ask me, they'll say, well, what if we get divorced after a year? Or what if the marriage is not working out after 6 months? Well, you could still file to get your permanent green card, but you have to prove that when you entered the marriage, you entered it for legitimate reasons, that it wasn't for immigration purposes, or what they call a bona fide good faith marriage. All right, so I'm not going to get into that right now. I'm going to assume that you stay married for 2 years, everything's happy, you guys are, living life, enjoying married life, and you just simply need to prove that you did get into a legitimate marriage, so you're going to collect evidence to do so. All right, and then the really cool thing is that once you file for that, you get your permanent green card, and soon thereafter, if you got your green card through marriage to a U.S. citizen, you can file for citizenship if you want to. But those are all topics for another day of Ask Samir. Hope that helped, Mary. And thank you for your question. And thank you all for checking out this episode of Ask Samir. All right, here's what you should do now. Speak to a licensed immigration lawyer about your case. If you'd like to speak with me, head over to kumarlaw.com and click on the button that says Talk to Samir. You and I will hop on the phone and you can ask me anything you want. No question is off limits. Thanks for checking out this episode of Ask Samir. For more videos or to ask me a question, head over to kumarlaw.com.